Hey everyone, I'm here to help you relax and drift off tonight. If you enjoy using these videos to fall asleep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more calming content. Share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'd love to know. Now settle into a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's start unwinding together. Long before modern memory had taken root in the valley, the land was governed by rhythms older than civilization. In those ancient days when the boundary between life and death was porous and the spirits of the departed wandered freely, a gifted mystic named Ilarion discovered a sacred ember amid the ruins of a shattered temple. This ember, cradled by the remnants of divine relics, burned with a light that transcended mortal flames. Ilarion, whose heart pulsed with an unusual blend of wisdom and sorrow, fashioned a lantern around the ember, encasing it in silver filigree and crystal panels etched with symbols of passage and rebirth. The lantern, once ignited, shone not with an ordinary radiance, but with a spectral light that revealed hidden trails and secret doorways. It was said that the lantern, imbued with both celestial grace and mortal determination, could show the bearer the pathway to the afterlife, a path lit by the memories of those who had passed on, a guide to the souls yet seeking rest. For centuries, the lantern remained lost to time, shrouded in myth and only passing from one gentle keeper to another, hidden in the folds of sacred groves and forgotten shrines. In the quiet village of Bellwood, where time and legend intermingled under ancient boughs, lived a young woman named Seraphine. Raised on stories of miracles and mysteries, she always felt drawn to the quiet corners of the world, where the veil between life and death was said to thin. One autumn evening, as the orange sun surrendered to the oncoming night, an unexpected visitor arrived at her modest cottage, a wizened elder cloaked in midnight blue robes, carrying an aura of both sorrow and hope. The elder revealed himself as a guardian of forgotten legacies and presented Seraphine with a small, ornate box. Inside lay a delicate lantern whose light pulsed with a soft, otherworldly glow. This lantern, he intoned, has been passed down through generations of souls, chosen to bear witness to the journey beyond. In your hands, it will reveal the path to the afterlife, not as a destination of finality, but as a gateway to reconciliation, healing, and renewal. Guard it well, for its light carries both promise and peril. With these weighty words echoing in her heart, Seraphine accepted the inheritance that would alter the course of her life, and perhaps the fate of many others to come. In the weeks that followed, Seraphine began to experiment with the lantern's mysterious glow. By day, it rested quietly on her mantle like a forgotten relic. By night, its ethereal light beckoned her to wander beneath the stars. One misty evening, compelled by dreams of a long-lost memory and the soft tug of destiny, she ventured into the woods that bordered Bellwood. Clutching the lantern in her trembling hands, she followed a narrow, winding path that seemed to materialize as if by magic. As she advanced deeper into the forest, the lantern's light grew stronger, casting pools of silver against moss-covered stones and setting the undergrowth aglow with spectral luminescence. The path twisted and turned, and suddenly she came upon a clearing where the air was thick with ancient whispers. It was there that the lantern revealed its true nature. Beneath its light lay an invisible roadway, glittering like a ribbon woven from the fabric of starlight and memory. In that transcendent moment, the boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the afterlife blurred. Seraphine understood that this was the passage foretold by legends, a passage that allowed the living to commune with the departed and to guide wandering souls to their final rest. As Seraphine began to explore the radiant pathway, she encountered figures that defied description. A father reunited with a lost child, spectral silhouettes of lovers entwined in eternal embrace, and solitary spirits searching for meaning in their endless journey. Each spirit exuded a quiet melancholy, yet also bore traces of unfinished dreams and lingering love. They moved gracefully along the illuminated path, their forms shimmering like delicate shadows against the lantern's glow. One such encounter was with a gentle man named Arden, whose wistful eyes spoke of regret and longing. Arden explained that in life he had been a healer, mending bodies and hearts, but had left behind unresolved sorrows when a cherished patient had slipped away. Now tethered by regret, his spirit wandered the threshold, unable to fully depart into the afterlife. Touched by his story, Seraphine offered him kindness and understanding, listening to his tale with empathetic fervor. In return, he shared with her invaluable wisdom about the nature of guilt, redemption, and the imperative of forgiveness, leaving an indelible mark upon her soul. Other encounters deepened her understanding of the balance between despair and hope. A spectral maiden clad in luminescent gossamer recounted tales of separation and loss, yet her eyes sparkled with the undeniable promise of reconciliation. A seasoned warrior, armor ghosted by time, told stories of sacrifice and honor, his spectral presence exuding both valor and vulnerability. Each encounter was a lesson, an invitation to see the afterlife not as a realm of despair, but as a continuum where every heartbeat of sorrow could transform into a note of healing. The journey along the path was not without peril. As the lantern guided her deeper into realms where memories and emotions pooled like mist, Seraphine soon faced trials that tested the very fiber of her being. At one critical juncture, the path forked into multiple trails, each enshrouded in swirling darkness. The lantern's light revealed fleeting images along each route, visions of different outcomes, each echoing with the voices of those who had walked there before. Her heart pounded with uncertainty. Could she choose the path that would lead her to ultimate salvation? Or was the burden of choice itself a reminder of the complexity of life and death? It was then that she recalled the guardian elder's words, that the lantern showed not only the way forward, but also the truths hidden in the shadows. Trusting her intuition, she allowed the lantern to guide her unerringly as she navigated the labyrinth of sorrow and hope. But the journey grew increasingly arduous. Winds of bitter memories whipped around her, and spectral apparitions of past regrets attempted to sway her from her course. In a moment of raw vulnerability, Seraphine found herself stranded at the edge of a chasm, a gap between worlds deep and fathomless. With her heart pounding in a silent rhythm, she clutched the lantern and stepped forward, trusting that its gentle glow would provide a bridge over the darkness. The leap, both physical and spiritual, was a testament to the resilience of her spirit, and as she landed on the other side, she felt an overwhelming surge of clarity and quiet determination. Emerging from the trials, Seraphine reached a clearing unlike any she had seen before. A vast, ethereal courtyard bathed in the soft glow of twilight. There, arranged in a circular formation, were the assembled spirits of those who had long awaited their passage into peaceful rest. The clearing served as a sort of council chamber for the departed, where souls gathered to share their stories, resolve ancient regrets, and prepare for the final transition. Guided by the lantern's unwavering light, Seraphine witnessed profound moments of communion among the spirits. A sage-like figure, draped in robes that shimmered with the hues of eternity, presided over the council. With a voice both ancient and gentle, the presiding spirit declared that the time had come for the souls burdened by lingering sorrow to embrace forgiveness, for themselves and for those they had left behind. In that sacred moment, every spirit present was offered a chance at absolution, a final opportunity to let go of the pains of mortal life. Moved by the ceremony, Seraphine felt herself transformed. No longer was she a mere guide for the wandering dead. She had become a vessel of compassion, a living testament to the infinite capacity for healing that bridges the chasm between life and the afterlife. Her own burdens of grief and regret began to dissipate as she witnessed the catharsis and unity that such profound release could bring. Having traveled far along the spectral path and having borne witness to the myriad forms of sorrow and joy that intermingled within the realm beyond, Seraphine began to understand the deeper meaning of the lantern. It was not just a beacon to the afterlife, but a tool of transformation. It allowed its bearer to see the unvarnished truth of existence, to embrace the entirety of life's experiences, no matter how painful, and to find beauty in the cycle of grief and renewal. In her quiet moments by the river of memories, a gentle stream that meandered through the afterlife like a ribbon of starlight, she discovered that the lantern's light could also reveal hidden fragments of joy buried in the depths of despair. The spectral glimmers that danced in the periphery of sorrow were, in fact, echoes of laughter, quiet tenderness, and love shared in moments too fleeting for mortal recollection. By embracing both the sorrow and the hope, one could traverse the vast territory between mortal existence and the eternal beyond. Her understanding deepened with each step, and the lantern's glow began to resonate with her inner light, becoming a part of her essence. It was then that the true purpose of her journey was revealed: to return to the world of the living and to share this sacred knowledge, enabling others to see that the boundary between life and death was a continuum, a passage where every ending held the promise of a new beginning. After what seemed an eternity spent amid the shimmering corridors of the afterlife, Seraphine found herself drawn back toward the realm of the living. With the lantern still in hand, its light now gentle and infused with the wisdom of countless souls, she retraced her steps along the luminous path until at last she emerged from the ancient woods and returned to Bellwood. The village, nestled at the foot of rolling hills and bathed in the soft hues of dawn, appeared untouched by the trials of life and death. Yet Seraphine saw it with new eyes. She began to share the tale of her journey, a tale not of horror and despair, but of rebirth, healing, and the enduring power of compassion. In quiet gatherings in the village square, by the flickering light of bonfires and the warm comfort of shared stories, she recounted how the lantern had shown her that the afterlife was not a realm of finality, but a bridge over which the living might find guidance in moments of grief. Her words resonated deeply with villagers, many of whom had, in their own ways, experienced loss and the quiet ache of memories unfulfilled. They listened intently as Seraphine described the ethereal beauty of the spectral path, the soulful counsel of departed hearts, and the gentle promise that every tear shed was a precursor to the renewal of life. The lantern, placed in a sacred alcove within the village chapel, became a symbol of hope and a reminder that even in the darkness, there lay a path toward healing. In the years that followed, Bellwood transformed into a haven for those who sought solace in the face of loss. Seraphine, now both mentor and mystic, gathered a small circle of kindred spirits, young and old, each touched by grief and eager to learn the sacred art of embracing the journey between life and the afterlife. Under her gentle tutelage, they learned to light their own lanterns of hope, symbolic gestures of their inner resolve to face sorrow with courage and compassion. Together, they organized quiet vigils and festivals of remembrance during the long winter nights, where stories of love, loss, and ultimate renewal were shared in soft, melodious tones. The lantern that had once shown the path to the afterlife became not a relic of despair, but a radiant beacon of transformation, a reminder that every ending contained the seed of an extraordinary new beginning. The lessons of the journey blossomed in each heart, encouraging a culture of empathy and a deep understanding that the human spirit, though tested by sorrow, was capable of rising again and again. As decades passed, the legend of the lantern spread far beyond the confines of Bellwood. Pilgrims, seekers, and weary souls traveled from distant lands, drawn by the promise of redemption and the gentle light that bridged two worlds. In temples, villages, and even great cities, the story was retold, a narrative woven from threads of sorrow and splashes of radiant hope. Seraphine, whose hair had turned silver and whose eyes shone with the reflective calm of someone who had journeyed through the ages, continued her work quietly. She documented the ever-evolving teachings of the lantern in carefully bound tomes, ensuring that future generations would know that the passage to the afterlife was not an end, but a transformative journey. Her writings described not only the luminous path she had walked, but also the myriad small miracles witnessed in everyday life. The silent courage of a grieving parent, the tender touch of a friend during hard times, and the ephemeral joy found in a moment of shared understanding. The lantern itself, now enshrined in the heart of Bellwood's chapel, remained a living symbol, its flame ever steady as a guide for souls adrift in sorrow. Its light, enriched by every tear and every smile it had witnessed, became a testament to the enduring resilience of life, a promise that even as we bid farewell, the bonds of love and memory carry us gently toward the infinite. Under the vast, starlit sky of a cool autumn night, as the whispers of the past mingled with the hopeful murmur of tomorrow, the lantern glowed softly in the quiet chapel of Bellwood. Its light, casting gentle shadows upon stone and wood, spoke silently of journeys completed and new ones about to begin. Visitors who knelt before it felt the profound certainty that the separation between life and death was not a chasm to be feared, but a bridge illuminated by compassion, remembrance, and the luminous flame of hope. In that sacred space, the lessons of the lantern endured, a legacy passed down through time, a gentle reminder that every soul, no matter how burdened by sorrow, holds within it the spark of renewal. And as long as the lantern's glow continued to guide the weary along the secret path to the afterlife, the cycle of grief and healing would persist, echoing through eternity as a hymn to the indomitable spirit of life. Thus ends the chronicle of a lantern that showed the path to the afterlife, a story of transcendence, of the delicate interplay between loss and hope, and of the eternal light that illuminates our journey from this world to the next and perhaps one day back again. It was on an overcast morning, when the fog embraced the valley in a silken cocoon, that young Iceland first encountered the river's mournful melody. A gentle seeker of truth and solace, she had grown up on legends passed down by her grandmother, tales of a river that cried for every sorrow, every injustice, and every unspoken farewell. Iceland had long felt a kinship with the whispers of the natural world, and on that fateful day, a soft, almost imperceptible sigh in the breeze led her down a winding, barely trodden path. As she neared the riverbank, the air pulsed with a rhythm of grief and grace, and the water's surface shimmered with an iridescence that seemed to capture every sorrow of the world. The song was at once heart-wrenching and beautiful, a ballad woven of loss and longing that tugged at the core of her being. There, at the water's edge, Iceland paused, transfixed by the lament that resonated in the hollows of her heart. In that moment, the river became both a mirror and a muse, reflecting her own hidden sorrows and the collective anguish of ages past. Years before, in her youth, the village seer had spoken of a mysterious figure known only as the Keeper of the Current, a spirit-bound guardian who patrolled the banks of the sorrowful river. It was said that the keeper had once been human, burdened by an unbearable grief, and had chosen to merge with the water in order to preserve the memory of loss for future generations. Clad in robes of drifting water and crowned with a wreath of willow branches, the keeper embodied the river's eternal mourning. Iceland's curiosity was ignited by these tales, and she resolved to seek an audience with this enigmatic presence. Over many nights spent in silent vigil beneath the cascading moonlight, the river began to stir with life. One ethereal evening, as the mist swirled like fragile veils, the keeper emerged, His eyes shimmered with luminescence, and his voice carried the weight of every forlorn soul that had ever wept by the river's edge. "Child of the midnight bloom," he intoned in a tone both tender and heavy, "why do you seek the chorus of our lament?" Humbled by his presence, Iceland replied in a whisper, "I come seeking understanding of my own sorrow and of the eternal grief that flows within these waters." The keeper nodded slowly, a gesture that stirred ripples across the surface. "Then listen well, for the river sings not only of despair, but also of remembrance, healing, and the promise that even in the deepest night, the dawn is waiting to be born." In the days that followed, Iceland visited the river with unyielding devotion. Each twilight, she sat by the bank, listening to the myriad voices that rose and fell with the current. Within its ceaseless song, she discerned fragments of ancient ballads, tales of forbidden love, of battles fought in vain, and of hearts broken by fate's relentless hand. In the lapping of the water, she heard the laughter of children now grown silent, and the soft murmurs of elders whose wisdom had faded into the twilight of memory. The river was a living archive of sorrow, its waters a repository of both public tragedy and private agony. One day she discovered a series of smooth stones along the bank, each etched with symbols and words worn by time and tide. When she traced her fingers over these inscriptions, visions flooded her mind, images of a lost civilization that had once revered the river as their spiritual guide, of lovers separated by the cruel hand of destiny, and of families torn apart by war and separation. Each stone was a silent testament to the human condition, capturing moments of despair and fragments of hope that were as transient as they were poignant. Iceland began to record these visions in her journal, determined to stitch together a tapestry of all the sorrow contained within the flowing current. In doing so, she felt that she was not merely chronicling tragedy, but also learning the language of healing, a path to transforming grief into wisdom. Word of the sorrowful river and its uncanny ability to echo the innermost laments of the human soul began to spread beyond the valley. Visitors came from distant lands, each drawn by the promise of catharsis and renewal. The town near the river, once quiet and unassuming, transformed during the annual Festival of Lament. Lanterns of soft, flickering light were hung from ancient oaks, and the air was filled with the mournful strains of violins and flutes. The villagers, who had long learned to live in the shadow of sorrow, gathered to honor both the grief and the healing that the river bestowed. At the festival, elders recounted the legend of how the river was born from the tears of a grieving deity, each droplet a song of yearning that transcended mortal life. Young poets recited verses inspired by the waters, their words weaving a tapestry of heartache and hope that resonated with all who listened. Amid the collective mourning, there was a palpable sense of communal healing, a recognition that sharing sorrow made its burden a little lighter. Iceland, now known as the chronicler of the river's tales, became a central figure at these gatherings. With gentle reverence, she recounted her own journey to understand the language of loss, drawing parallels between the river's persistent lament and the struggles of every soul present. It was in these shared moments of grief that the community found its strength, each tear and sigh a stepping stone toward the promise of renewal. One moonlit night, while the festival was in full bloom and the sound of heartfelt lamentations echoed across the riverbank, Iceland discovered something extraordinary. Amidst the layered harmonies of sorrow, she discerned a hidden chorus, a more uplifting strain interwoven with the grief. At first it was barely audible, a gentle counterpoint to the dominant dirge of heartache. But with each passing night, that hopeful melody grew clearer, as if urging those who listened to embrace the possibility of healing. Following the subtle strains, Iceland ventured further upstream, beyond the familiar banks and into a secluded glen where the forest whispered its own ancient secrets. There the river narrowed and its song softened, becoming intimate and almost conversational. In that sacred space, she encountered an elderly woman sitting by the water, a mystic known as Isolde, whose own life had been marred by sorrow, but who had embraced the promise of rebirth. Isolde spoke of the hidden chorus as the song of resilience, a melody that emerged when those who wept by the river opened their hearts to the possibility of joy, even if only for a fleeting moment. Every tear, Isolde said, her eyes glistening like dewdrops in the dawn, carries with it a seed of hope. The river's sorrow is its memory, but the hidden chorus is the promise that those memories can bloom into something beautiful. The agony you hear is not the end. It is simply a prelude to a new refrain. Her words resonated deeply with Iceland, who began to see the river not as a monument of perpetual sadness, but as a dynamic testament to the human spirit, a flowing reminder that every song of sorrow held within it the potential for transformation. Driven by this newfound understanding, Aislinn dedicated herself to a journey along the full course of the river. She sought to trace its origins and follow the trail of its evolving melodies, from the crushing dirge at its source to the gentle harmonies that emerged nearer to its end. Her journey was fraught with hardship. Storms battered the banks, and treacherous rapids forced her to confront both the physical perils of the wild and the metaphorical torrents of despair that sometimes overwhelmed her. In a small village nestled midway along the river, she encountered a man named Eamon, a broken soul who had lost everything to tragedy. Eamon had devoted his life to the river's rhythm, believing that its continual lament was a mirror of his own sorrow. With words laden with regret and despair, he shared his story of lost love and shattered dreams, confessing that the river's song had been his only constant companion in the endless darkness of his grief. Aislinn listened to his lament with empathy and compassion, offering him solace and a promise of renewal. In return, Eamon guided her to a hidden alcove behind a cascade of water, a place where the river's song transformed into a single, crystalline note that seemed to vibrate with the clarity of truth. It was there that Eamon revealed a secret. The key to understanding the river lay in acknowledging that its sorrow was as much a part of life as its quiet moments of beauty. In that precise space, where the agony and the hope converged, one could find the answer to healing. Eamon's parting words, "Let the river remind you that sorrow gives birth to the strength to endure," became a mantra for Aislinn as she continued her arduous pilgrimage. Venturing further downstream, Aislinn reached a place where the river broadened into a vast, mirror-like expanse. Here the water was slow and deep, and its song took on a reflective quality, each note echoing like a whispered memory of what had been. In the stillness, the river seemed to invite silent contemplation, and its melody grew rich with the accumulated sorrows of innumerable generations. In this sacred space, Aislinn built a small sanctuary from stones and wildflowers, a haven where she could immerse herself in the symphony of the water. Night after night, under the velvet canopy of the stars, she would sit for hours listening to the river's soulful lament, a meditation on loss, legacy, and the cyclical nature of existence. Over time, she began to notice subtle changes. The mournful strains softened, and occasionally the gentle laughter of the breeze mingled with the water's lament, creating a fragile, bittersweet harmony. It was as if the river, in its endless sorrow, remembered that life itself was a balance of both grief and joy. As the seasons shifted, Aislinn recorded these evolutions in her journal, creating a chronicle of the river's moods and metamorphoses. She concluded that the river was not merely a bearer of sorrow, but rather an eloquent storyteller, a flowing narrative that captured the entirety of the human experience, from its darkest despair to its most radiant hope. On a mist-clad morning, when the river's song was unusually subdued and introspective, Aislinn encountered a gathering of travelers along its bank. They were wanderers, poets, and healers from distant lands, drawn to the river by tales of its haunting melodies. Each of them carried their own burdens, the weight of memories too painful to bear, or the scars of hearts long shattered. Together they formed a motley caravan united by their shared yearning for solace and understanding. Over days that blended into nights, they journeyed along the river's course, sharing stories around crackling fires under a vault of countless stars. In those moments of communal communion, the river's sorrow transformed into a collective hymn, a soft, uniting refrain that bound these disparate souls together. They sang of their losses, but also of the lessons learned and the love that persevered amid even the deepest sorrow. Through this shared experience, the travelers discovered that the river's song was not solely a lament for what was lost, but also a celebration of the resilience of the human spirit. One evening, as the group gathered on a gently sloping bank, an elderly bard rose among them. With a voice both weathered and tender, he recited an ancient poem that seemed to capture the very essence of the river's lament. In tears that carved the silent stone, in sorrow's song where hearts have flown, there lies the seed of hope unseen, for every dusk foretells a dawn serene. His words stirred within the assembled souls a profound understanding that, like the river, they must learn to embrace both the sorrow and the beauty of existence. In the wake of that sacred gathering, Iselin realized that the purpose of her journey was transforming. No longer did she seek solely to understand the sorrow of the river. She now yearned to help nurture the hidden hope that lay beneath its lament. With the wisdom gleaned from countless nights of solitary reflection and communal song, she resolved to build a lasting tribute along the river, a place where all who suffered could come to find solace and renewal. Working alongside the travelers and local villagers, Aislinn helped construct a modest sanctuary on the river's edge. With gentle hands, they planted ancient willows whose sweeping branches whispered with the memory of the water. They built small altars adorned with tokens of remembrance, love letters faded with time, weathered mementos of lives once vibrant, and intricate carvings recounting the moments of heartbreak and healing. In the center of this sacred space, a stone basin was hewn directly from the rocky bank, into which the river's waters flowed in a constant, meditative rhythm. It became known as the Basin of Remembrance, a place where visitors could immerse themselves in both the sorrow and the quiet promise of renewal. As seasons cycled from the deep greens of summer to the rich golds of autumn and into the quiet grays of winter, the sanctuary flourished. Each visitor left with a piece of the river's legacy in their hearts, a renewed understanding that sorrow, when embraced, could lead to genuine healing. Aislinn herself continued to record the transformations in her journals, her words a testament to the ever-evolving song of the river and the resilient spirit of all who came seeking refuge in its gentle embrace. In the fullness of time, the river that once sang only songs of sorrow evolved into something altogether richer, a living epic of loss, love, and transcendence. Its melodies still wept with the grief of generations, but now they intertwined with notes of healing, gratitude, and the unyielding power of hope. The Basin of Remembrance became a pilgrimage site for those weary from the weight of sorrow, and the sanctuary by the river grew into a beacon of light, guiding lost souls back to themselves. Iselin, now aged and with her hair touched by silver, continued her tireless work as both chronicler and guardian of the river's legacy. With each passing day, she could sense the subtle shift in the water's song, a slow, deliberate change, as if the river itself was learning to sing the praise of life even as it mourned its losses. In the quiet moments of dawn, as the first light danced upon the gentle ripples, she would pause, listening to the faint strains of an ancient lullaby that spoke of both sorrow and the promise of a new beginning. And so, the legend of the river that sings songs of sorrow endured, a timeless reminder that even in the depths of grief, there is beauty to be found, and that every sorrow carries within it the seed of hope and the possibility of renewal. Long after Iceland's footsteps had faded into the annals of memory, the river continued to flow, a living monument to the complex tapestry of the human soul. Its waters, once solely a medium for lament, now shimmered with the iridescence of shared sorrow and enduring hope. Travelers and pilgrims still journeyed to the basin of remembrance, where they would sit in silence, allowing the gentle current to carry away their burdens and, if only for a moment, restore the light in their hearts. In the soft murmur of its flowing waves, the river whispered an eternal truth, that sorrow is as natural as the passing of seasons, and that every mournful note is a necessary prelude to the awakening of dawn. Its song, eternal, evolving, and achingly beautiful, served as both a requiem for what has been lost and an anthem for all that can still be reclaimed. Thus, in the quiet, unending flow of the lamenting flow, the legacy of sorrow and hope intermingled like streams converging at a sacred delta, promising that no heart need wander alone in the darkness. For as long as the river sang its timeless tune, every soul that yearned for solace would find its echo in the whispering waters, an everlasting song of transformation, healing, and the inexhaustible resilience of life. In the midst of all life's tempests, the river remains, a constant reminder that sorrow, though deeply felt, is but one verse in the grand symphony of existence. Its gentle song encourages every listener to embrace both the pain and the beauty that define what it means to be human, teaching us that in the soft, steady cadence of time, even the most sorrowful notes can lead to a new refrain filled with hope. The change began on an unremarkable autumn afternoon. The sky was a tapestry of peeling blues and gentle grays, and the bustling streets of Soul Haven filled with the familiar cacophony of daily life. As dusk approached, however, something began to stir, a subtle murmur in the wind, a strange shift in the way the light fell upon the cobblestones. Citizens felt a chill that had nothing to do with the dropping temperature. Within minutes, conversations petered out, as if the voices of the living themselves were fading. Evelyn Marston, a schoolteacher known for her warm smile and gentle humor, was one of the first to notice that something was terribly amiss. While escorting her students home, she saw that the familiar figures on the street had begun to blur and dissolve. Faces once vibrant with emotion thinned into dark outlines, leaving behind only their shadows. By the time the last bell of the day tolled, every inhabitant of Soul Haven had been reduced to mere silhouettes against the deepening gloom. In the immediate aftermath of that strange twilight, the physical world of Soul Haven appeared unchanged to an outside observer. Buildings, bridges, and winding streets remained. Yet deep within every doorway and under every lamppost, something vital was missing. The inhabitants, stripped of flesh and voice, had become living shadows. They walked silently through the streets. They gestured in ghostly forms, but did not speak, nor did they interact in any recognizable way. In the days that followed, the phenomenon grew more intricate. The shadows began to exhibit peculiar behaviors. Some lingered in spots where their former selves had once been happy. Outside the bakery on a sunny morning, or near the town square fountain where children had played. Others moved as if burdened by an unseen sorrow, drifting aimlessly through alleys. There was a haunting quality to their existence, a constant reminder that what was lost could never be regained. Rumors began to circulate among the last few who still clung to a fading hint of corporeality, that Soul Haven was cursed, and that the curse was not a doom for the dead, but for the living themselves. Among the dwindling vestiges of humanity was a man named Thomas Reed, a historian with an insatiable curiosity and a burning desire for answers. Thomas had spent years exploring Solhaven's rich archives before the transformation. When the change occurred, he miraculously retained a spark of his former self, not as a fully living person, but as a being of both shadow and substance, straddling the line between existence and memory. Thomas began his quest by wandering the empty libraries, where dusty tomes whispered secrets of ancient lore. In the brittle pages of forgotten manuscripts, he discovered cryptic references to an age-old myth, a prophecy foretelling a time when the heart of a town would be left with only the memories of its people, manifesting as shadows. Could it be that Solhaven's demise had been foreseen, recorded in enigmatic symbols and hidden among the text of arcane legends? With a determination that bordered on obsession, Thomas spent sleepless nights poring over records, piecing together a tapestry of clues that pointed to an intermingling of fate, cosmic forces, and the fragility of the human spirit. Meanwhile, faint whispers began to circulate among the shadows, a language without sound, yet laden with meaning. Thomas learned to read these whispers as subtle shifts in color and movement. They told of a time when the townspeople had made a terrible bargain with an entity that resided between the realms of life and death. In exchange for a reprieve from mortal pain and suffering, Solhaven had sacrificed its humanity. The true nature of this bargain, however, remained shrouded in mystery. As weeks turned into months, the town of Solhaven transformed into a place between worlds. The physical structures, though still standing, assumed an eerie quality. Rain fell in an endless, muted drizzle that neither cleaned nor nourished. The cobblestones, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, glimmered with a spectral luster under the weak light of a perpetual dusk. The shadows, once echoes of the vibrant souls they mirrored, began to develop their own existence. They moved in patterns reminiscent of dance, swirling gracefully in the abandoned town square, as if performing a ritual commemorating the life that had been. In the absence of voices, the silent ballet of these silhouettes became the new language of Solhaven, a language of longing, sorrow, and faded beauty. Thomas, aided by fleeting moments of lucidity where he could feel a ghost of warmth in his own heart, started to document his observations. He kept meticulous notes, sketches of shadows caught in the act of silent conversation, and theories on the nature of the bargain that had doomed the town. His notebooks grew heavy with symbols and cross-references to the ancient manuscripts he had discovered. In the margins, he scribbled desperate questions. Could the bargain be undone? Is there a way to restore life to a place where only memories persist? And if so, at what cost? One fog-laden night, as the thin veil between existence and oblivion seemed particularly fragile, Thomas experienced a revelation that would change the fate of Solhaven forever. Wandering near the remnants of a once grand theater, he observed a peculiar formation of shadows congregating by the stage. Unlike the aimless drifting of most silhouettes, these shadows seemed to be gathering with purpose, forming shapes that hinted at faces from long-past performances. A deep, resonant pulse, almost like a heartbeat, vibrated through the night air, drawing Thomas closer to the stage. There, in the dim luminescence of shattered moonlight, the shadows coalesced into an intricate pattern. Slowly, they began to form words, not in audible speech, but in shifting silhouettes that danced upon the crumbling walls. The message was clear, yet enigmatic. To reclaim our light, we must awaken the heart of Solhaven. The bargain was sealed in sorrow. Only through remembrance and true sacrifice can we break the chain. Overwhelmed yet resolute, Thomas realized that the key to salvation lay not in reversing the curse by force, but in embracing the memories that had been sacrificed. The heart of Solhaven, a symbol mentioned in the old manuscripts, was said to reside beneath the town, a crystalline source of ancient energy that pulsed with the collective memories and emotions of generations past. With a mix of trepidation and determination, Thomas gathered the last of the fragments of human resolve in Soulhaven. He convinced a small band of shadows, once friends, neighbors, and loved ones, to join him on a perilous journey to the subterranean depths beneath the town. Among them was Miriam, whose laughter once filled the streets but had since only existed as a luminous silhouette, and Daniel, a stoic figure whose silent eyes held the weight of endless regret. The group found the entrance to the underground realm beneath the dilapidated remains of an old chapel, its wooden doors scarred by time and decay. With each step downward into the labyrinthine tunnels, the temperature dropped and the oppressive weight of the past pressed heavily upon their shadowed forms. The walls of the underground corridors were etched with memories, faint impressions of graffiti and mural-like images that spoke of love, loss, and the unyielding march of time. At the deepest chamber, Thomas discovered a vast cavern where natural crystals emanated a soft, pulsating glow. In the center of the cavern lay the heart of Soulhaven, a crystalline structure interwoven with veins of glowing light that flickered in time with the breath of the earth. It was as if the very essence of the town, its joys and sorrows, were encapsulated in this radiant gem. In that moment of profound beauty and sorrow, the truth of the curse was laid bare. The bargain that had doomed Soulhaven was simple yet cruel. In exchange for a reprieve from pain and death, the townspeople had relinquished their physical forms in favor of eternal remembrance, a shadow of themselves forever trapped in a liminal state. The heart of Soulhaven was both the source of their existence and the key to breaking the curse. However, to restore life to the town, one must reconcile with the entirety of one's past, including the deepest regrets and the most tender memories. Thomas understood that the process of restoration would demand a sacrifice, a relinquishment of all that they had become, and the courage to face the full spectrum of emotion in order to reclaim their forgotten light. Gathering the shadows around him, he spoke in the quiet language of gestures and shifting hues, conveying his plan. They must each offer a piece of their essence to the heart, to awaken it fully and to restore the physical forms that had been sacrificed. One by one, Miriam, Daniel, and the others stepped forward. Their shadows quivered as they approached the glowing crystal, and in that silent communion, each released a cherished memory. The laughter at a childhood festival, the warmth of a long-lost embrace, the bittersweet taste of farewell. With every offering, the heart's glow intensified, its radiance spreading like a ripple throughout the cavern. As the final sacrifice was made, the cavern trembled with a surge of uncontained energy. The crystalline heart of Soulhaven pulsed in brilliant radiance, and the recollected memories swirled upward like shooting stars against the darkness. The shadows that had long drifted without purpose were engulfed in a luminous aura. For a heartbeat, the entire underground chamber was bathed in incandescent light that felt both painfully honest and extraordinarily beautiful. Then, with a sound like the breaking of a long-held silence, a sound that resonated like the chime of countless bells, the energy cascaded upward. The luminous glow seeped into the very foundations of Soulhaven, reaching up through crevices and alleys, through houses and marketplaces long abandoned by life. At the same time, in the cavern above, the shadows began to coalesce and solidify. Limbs and features reformed slowly, like forgotten sketches coming back to vivid life, each line and curve imbued with the memory of what once was. Outside, the first light of dawn began to filter through dissipating fog. The town of Soulhaven, once shrouded in perpetual twilight and ghostly figures, began to take on a shape that resembled its former self. Buildings stood sturdier, streets grew clearer, and in the quiet, tentative steps of former residents, the promise of a reclaimed future was born. The process of restoration was not without its scars. While many who had offered their essence found themselves reborn into flesh and blood, some bore the marks of their journey, A lingering silver glimmer in their eyes, a cadence in their step that spoke of ineffable loss and rediscovered hope. The town, too, was forever changed. Those who once walked as mere shadows carried within them both the resilience of memory and the sorrow of that long-forgotten day. Thomas, now both a guardian of history and a living testament to the transformative power of remembrance, began to work tirelessly to document the events that had transpired. He wrote in thick journals, his handwriting a blend of triumph and melancholy. His accounts were filled with details of the underground cavern, the luminous heart, and the sacrifices made to break the curse. A chronicle intended to guide future generations through the fragile balance of remembering and living. Slowly, the people of Solhaven began to rebuild their lives. The local shops reopened, the market returned with laughter and debate, and families gathered around fireplaces that now burned with a renewed intensity. Although memories of the shadowed days remained as a quiet, reflective undertone to daily existence, they served as a reminder that even in the darkest hour, hope could be reclaimed through truth and sacrifice. Years later, Solhaven had become more than just a town reborn. It was a living museum of the human spirit. Statues and murals depicted the profound transformation of its people, a tribute to the idea that our deepest scars and brightest memories are intertwined, each giving shape to who we become. The heart of Solhaven, now enshrined in a graceful pavilion in the town square, continued to pulse softly, its light a constant reminder of the delicate equilibrium between what was lost and what was found. The reborn residents told stories to their children about the day when only shadows remained, describing it not as a time of despair, but as a necessary passage to rediscovery. They spoke in hushed reverence of the sacrifices made in the underground cavern and of the luminous power of memory that had restored their humanity. In the evenings, as the town gathered to celebrate under starlight, they would recount these tales, not to dwell on sorrow, but to honor the strength that had allowed them to reawaken. Thomas Reed, long regarded as the town's sage and historian, became a revered figure whose words carried the weight of ages. In his later years, he would wander the now vibrant streets, pausing at the pavilion to touch the smooth surface of the heart. He would smile thoughtfully, recalling how a single day's twilight could eventually lead to a dawn beyond compare. His own journey from a being of fractured shadow to a man of renewed light stood as proof that even when one's life seems irretrievably lost, the courage to remember can forge a path back to wholeness. As twilight once again enveloped the town of Solhaven, its streets shimmered with memories both old and new. The legacy of the day when only shadows remained was inscribed in every brick and echoed in every whisper of the wind. The delicate dance between shadow and light had become the heartbeat of the town, a silent promise that every moment, whether filled with sorrow or joy, contributed to the intricate tapestry of life. New generations, raised on stories of the transformation, learned early that life was a balance of both presence and absence, of tangible moments and the transient beauty of memory. They knew that the shadows were not enemies to be vanquished, but silent companions, reminders of what had been and guides to what could still be. And the heart of Solhaven, ever radiant in its crystal splendor, served as both guardian and muse, a beacon that inspired those who gazed upon it to cherish every second. In Solhaven, the night was never truly dark, for even in the fading of light, there lingered a promise that every shadow was a reflection of life lived, and every whisper of memory held the potential to ignite a new day. The town endured, forever a testament to the idea that even when only shadows remain, hope can be rekindled, and humanity can rise again. Thus ends the Chronicle of Solhaven, a story of transformation, sacrifice, and the timeless interplay of memory and light. In the quiet rustle of leaves and the soft glow of dawn, the legacy of that fateful day lives on, a guide for all souls yearning to reclaim their lost brilliance and find meaning in the interplay of shadow and luminescence. Grey Haven, a coastal town known for its misty mornings and salt-kissed air, bore the weight of a rich yet sorrowful history. Villagers recalled that long ago, Grey Haven had been a thriving port, a bustling center of commerce and human connection. Yet calamities, a monstrous storm, inexplicable disappearances, and whispered curses had befallen the town over the decades. In the wake of these tragedies, many souls had been left unmoored, their memories destined to fade like ripples on a stagnant pond. A legend endured among the people that a bell, forged in a time when faith and fear intertwined, was capable of reuniting the living with the souls left behind. Generations later, as the scars of old wounds smoothed over with the passage of time, some still claim to hear its distant, melancholy toll deep in the night. Evelyn Marlowe, a historian with an insatiable curiosity for lost lore, arrived in Grey Haven during the waning days of summer. Drawn by both academic intrigue and an inexplicable personal longing, she was determined to explore the town's haunted past. Her research led her to the dilapidated chapel perched on a windswept hill, the place where the legendary bell was said to reside. The chapel, swallowed by ivy and silenced by decay, seemed a repository of sorrow. As Evelyn stepped through its creaking door, the cool interior enveloped her. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light that pierced the gloom. In the far corner, concealed by broken pews, lay an iron-bound chest. Inside it, among yellowed manuscripts and relics of a bygone era, rested a small key inscribed with cryptic symbols. The inscription bore the unmistakable emblem of the chapel and hinted at the access to the bell tower, a place sealed off after the last toll was heard many decades ago. Armed with the key and a sense of trepidation, Evelyn ascended the narrow spiral staircase that led to the bell tower. Each step creaked underfoot as if protestations of warning were etched into the timbers. At the summit, a heavy oak door barred the entry to the room where the bell resided. With trembling fingers, she inserted the key into the lock. The door groaned open, and the scent of ancient incense mingled with the brine of the sea wafted in. Inside, the chamber was dominated by the bell suspended from a sturdy crossbeam. Its surface, though pitted and scarred, gleamed faintly under the moonlight, streaming through a shattered window. The silence was palpable, a quiet promise that something awaited. Evelyn's hand hovered over the cold metal, hesitant to disturb the long-held silence. Yet deep within her, a yearning to uncover lost stories urged her forward. On an impulse that felt both bold and misguided, Evelyn rang the bell. Its tone was otherworldly, a deep, sonorous sound that reverberated like the heartbeat of the earth. The chime echoed far beyond the chapel walls, seeping into the alleys of Grey Haven and stirring ancient echoes within the town. For a moment, time itself appeared to pause, as if the sound had suspended the fabric of reality. Within minutes, subtle signs of change began to manifest. In the fog that enshrouded the streets, silhouettes of figures emerged, vaguely visible and slowly growing in detail. It was as though the sound had drawn them from the margins of forgetfulness. Residents peered from shuttered windows, their expressions a blend of awe and dread. The forgotten spirits once trapped in the haze of oblivion were returning to the realm of the living. As the spectral figures gathered in the streets of Grey Haven, a poignant narrative unfolded. Among them were lovers torn apart by fate, brave sailors lost at sea, and even children whose laughter had once filled the town square. Their forms shimmered with ethereal light, and their eyes, filled with the weight of unspoken tales, conveyed a silent gratitude for being remembered. Evelyn watched in disbelief as the spirits converged toward the bell tower. Some wandered aimlessly, drawn by intangible memories, while others stood in solemn clusters, as if awaiting a message long overdue. An elderly man with sorrowful eyes approached her, his voice soft and resonant. "You have awakened us, child. We were left behind when the tides of time swept us away. What is it that you seek?" His inquiry, gentle yet filled with a lifetime of regret, resonated deeply within her. Over the following nights, the bell's toll became a ritual, a call that allowed Evelyn to commune with these spirits. Guided by the melancholy chime, she began conversing with them, recording their tales and weaving their voices into a tapestry of memory. The spirits recounted accounts of lives that had been vibrant yet abruptly stilled. They spoke of joys, betrayals, unfulfilled dreams, and the eternal ache of loneliness. Each conversation was a lesson, a solemn reminder that every life, no matter how brief, carried weight beyond mortality. There was Marcellus, the sailor whose final voyage was shrouded in mystery. He recalled the turbulent seas, the fierce winds that had nearly torn him from his vessel, and the bittersweet realization that the ocean was both his ally and his nemesis. Then there was Lillian, a young woman whose passion for art had been eclipsed by societal constraints. Her spirit exuded a fragile beauty as she reminisced about the canvases she had painted, each stroke a burst of color in a life otherwise painted in shades of sorrow. As Evelyn's bond with the spirits deepened, she discovered that another presence lingered among them, the keeper of memories. Clad in antiquated garments and exuding a quiet authority, the keeper was tasked with preserving the essence of those who had passed. The keeper explained that the bell was no mere instrument of summoning, but a bridge between two realms. "Every toll of the bell seals the pact between memory and oblivion," he intoned in a voice that resonated like a forgotten hymn. "When we are remembered, we persist, and our stories become eternal." Evelyn learned that long ago the bell was constructed during a time of great upheaval, when the living and the dead were believed to share one continuous cycle. Its creation had been an act of hope, meant to honor those who might otherwise be lost to the ravages of time. The keeper shared ancient manuscripts and faded letters that chronicled the bell's legacy, revealing names, dates, and tragedies that had shaped Greyhaven over centuries. But the reunion was not without consequence. A darker force, awakened by the ringing of the bell, began to emerge. A spectral presence that defied the benevolence of memory. This entity, known only as the Forsaken, was an embodiment of forgotten pain and repressed remorse. In moments of quiet terror, Evelyn sensed its chilling presence amid the congregation of benevolent spirits. It whispered of despair and of lives that had been consumed by regret. Its influence threatened to sever the fragile balance established by the bell's resonance. Determined to protect the town and the spirits alike, Evelyn and the keeper began a quest to understand the origin of the Forsaken. They delved into ancient records and folklore, discovering that the entity was born of unacknowledged tragedies, a repository of collective sorrow that had grown in the silence between heartbeats. The solution, they surmised, lay in embracing the totality of one's history, both the light and the dark. Only by truly remembering every facet of life could the curse be lifted, transforming the Forsaken into a part of the broader narrative of healing and acceptance. In the days that followed, the town of Greyhaven transformed. Evelyn organized gatherings where the living came together to share stories of their ancestors, of both joy and pain. The bell was rung regularly, not as a summons for lost souls alone, but as a call for community, a reminder that every life mattered, every memory was significant. The rituals evolved into a celebration of continuity, a town-wide festival where music, art, and storytelling breathed new life into the past. At one such gathering, as dusk surrendered to night, the bell's sonorous toll mingled with the lilting voices of townsfolk. In that moment, the Forsaken, once a disembodied force of despair, began to dissipate, its energy absorbed into the collective healing of Greyhaven. The people learned that remembrance, when imbued with compassion, had the power to transform even the deepest wounds. Evelyn, now revered as the chronicler of Greyhaven's soul, documented the transformation in meticulous detail. Her journal overflowed with the voices of the forgotten, now reconciled with their own histories. As years passed, the bell's chime became more than a spectral summons. It evolved into a requiem for both the past and the present. Under a twilight sky, when the boundary between worlds softened, the bell tolled with unwavering rhythm. It spoke of lost loves rediscovered, of wisdom gleaned from hardship, and of an enduring connection that transcended mortal limitations. The once sorrowful echo had matured into a lullaby that cradled the town in gentle reassurances, inviting all to partake in the eternal cycle of remembrance and renewal. During one particularly luminous night, the keeper and Evelyn met once more in the bell tower. They shared a quiet moment of reflection. The keeper confided, "Every time the bell rings, it is a reminder that to be forgotten is to cease existing. Your courage has rekindled a flame of remembrance that even the darkest sorrow cannot extinguish." Evelyn, gazing into the endless night, realized that her journey was far from over. She had not only bridged the gap between life and death, but had also bound the community together in the luminous tapestry of shared history. Long after Evelyn's time, the legend of the bell that summons forgotten spirits persisted in Greyhaven. The chapel's ruins became a hallowed site where generations gathered to honor their shared past. New stories were woven into the fabric of the town, a continuing narrative of both celebration and mourning. The bell, ever vigilant, remained a silent sentinel over the threshold of memory, its chime a perpetual call to honor those who had once lived and to welcome the lessons of every soul. In the hushed moments of dawn, when the first rays of sunlight crest the misty streets, the bell would toll softly, a gentle reminder that every memory is sacred. And in that reverberating tone lay the promise that the forgotten would never truly fade. For as long as someone remembered them, their spirit would linger in the endless echo of time. Thus the tale of the bell endures, a sprawling epic of memory, loss, and renewal. Its story is not merely one of spectral apparitions, but a chronicle of life itself, where every forgotten spirit finds solace in the warmth of remembrance, and every chime offers a bridge between the ephemeral and the eternal. Isabel Rivera, a young and ambitious art historian, was the first to notice the unsettling change. During her nightly rounds in the museum, Isabel paused before midnight reverie and felt a chill that seemed to emanate from the portrait itself. The painting, which once bore a light and nuanced quality, now had an edge that hinted at an encroaching darkness. As days passed, subtle alterations became apparent. The shadows around the subject's eyes deepened, the background swirled with an impenetrable blackness, and the overall vibrancy seemed to ebb with each sunrise. Obsessed by the mystery, Isabel began meticulous documentation. Each evening she recorded photographs, noting the incremental change with scientific precision. Yet no matter how much light she bathed the room in, the darkening persisted. The process, both slow and relentless, struck her as a silent testament to the inexorable passage of time, and perhaps something more sinister, an artistic echo of life's inevitable descent into darkness. In her quest for answers, Isabel delved into the archives of the mansion and discovered a faded ledger detailing the provenance of Midnight Reverie. The painting had been commissioned by a reclusive noble known as Lord Alistair Blackwood during the twilight of the 18th century. Rumors hinted that Blackwood was not merely a patron of the arts, but a man deeply engrossed in occult practices and the exploration of forbidden knowledge. The ledger described the painting as a mirror of the soul, capturing not only the visage of its subject, but the hidden truths of the heart. It appeared that Blackwood had believed that the canvas could serve as a kind of diary, one that recorded not the static image of the sitter, but the emotional and spiritual decay that time wrought. As Isabel pored over the records, she became increasingly convinced that the painting's mysterious darkening was no accident. It was, in fact, a deliberate act, a slow unraveling of a secret that Blackwood had tried so desperately to keep hidden. Late one stormy night, as thunder rolled in the distance and rain lashed the tall, arched windows of the mansion, Isabel received a visit from an elderly caretaker named Mr. Hargrove. With eyes clouded by memories and age, he recounted unsettling legends passed down through generations of the mansion staff. He spoke of a curse that had long surrounded the Blackwood family, a curse that claimed that any art created under its influence would eventually reveal the deep sorrow and despair of its maker. According to Mr. Hargrove, the painting was rumored to be cursed from the moment its brushstrokes had graced the canvas. The nobleman, tormented by personal loss and driven by his obsession to capture the essence of mortality, had imbued the work with a fragment of his own tortured soul. "It feeds on despair," Hargrove whispered, his voice barely audible over the tumult outside. "Every day it grows darker because it absorbs the sorrow of those who look upon it, and one day it may even cast that darkness back upon the world." Isabel's scientific mind warred with the creeping dread seeded by these tales. Could it be possible that a painting could be both a work of art and a vessel of a curse? The more she investigated, the more uneasy she became. A scholar caught between the realms of rational inquiry and the seductive allure of the supernatural. In the following weeks, a series of inexplicable events began to occur. Night after night, as Isabel studied the painting, the ambient temperature in the gallery dropped dramatically. Shadows seemed to coalesce around the portrait, moving independently of the static image it portrayed. She could swear that on certain nights the eyes of the figure in the painting appeared to follow her, glimmering with an inner light before subsiding into darkness once more. One particularly eerie evening, as a full moon bathed the museum in silvery light, Isabel stayed late to document the final changes. As she adjusted her camera's lens, the soft hum of the building gave way to a subtle whisper, a sibilant murmur that seemed to emanate directly from midnight reverie. The sound was indistinct, yet filled with a profound sorrow and longing, as though the spirit within the painting was calling out for recognition or release. Startled, Isabel fumbled with her equipment, and for one frozen moment, the room was plunged into a deep and foreboding silence. Haunted by the eerie occurrences, Isabel began to experience vivid dreams in which she found herself standing in a dim, labyrinthine hall lined with portraits of anguished faces. In these dreams, the subject of midnight reverie emerged repeatedly, sometimes with a pleading expression, sometimes with a resigned acceptance. Each encounter left Isabel with a lingering sense of melancholy that seeped into her waking hours. Her colleagues noticed the subtle change in her demeanor. The vibrant scholar, once full of life and ambition, now wore an expression of constant weariness, as though a piece of her spirit had been chipped away by the relentless pull of the painting's sorrow. Determined to understand the curse and its source, Isabel began to research ancient texts on art, alchemy, and the human soul. She pieced together fragments of lore that spoke of art as a living conduit, a means by which the artist's deepest emotions could be immortalized, for better or for worse. In one dusty manuscript, she read of a ritual that could supposedly seal a painting against the encroachment of despair. But the instructions were cryptic, blending symbolism with arcane references. The ritual required elements as enigmatic as the painting itself. Midnight oil blessed by a mourner's tear, a lock of hair from someone whose heart had been profoundly broken, and a chant in an ancient language long forgotten. In her desperation, Isabel began to wonder if she could be the one to break the curse that was slowly consuming her life. Isabel embarked on a journey to gather the necessary components for the ritual. Her quest took her far beyond the confines of the mansion into the depths of historical libraries, remote villages, and even cemeteries steeped in tragic lore. In a small town on the outskirts of a mist-shrouded moor, she met Amelia, a woman whose life had been indelibly marked by loss. With a voice trembling yet resolute, Amelia agreed to donate a lock of her hair, a sacrifice born of an unspoken desire to help free Isabel from the darkness. Similarly, in an ancient apothecary on a narrow cobblestone street, an elderly priest guided her to a vial of midnight oil, prepared according to rites that had been preserved through generations of secret custodians. Each piece of the puzzle came with its own price, a whispered promise, a tear, or a long-forgotten prayer that resonated with the universal language of sorrow. As Isabel collected these relics, she felt both a growing determination and a profound sadness. The more she learned, the more she realized that the curse was not just a malevolent force, but a reflection of the eternal struggle between light and dark within every heart. On the night of the new moon, a time when darkness reigned supreme, Isabel returned to the mansion. With trembling hands, she prepared the ritual in a secluded alcove within the gallery, far from prying eyes. The room was arranged with symbolic markings and relics, each carefully positioned as dictated by the ancient manuscript. The components were laid out in a precise formation around midnight reverie, whose darkening presence loomed over the ceremony. As Isabel began the incantation, reciting the chant in the archaic language of the manuscript, the atmosphere grew heavy with anticipation. The whispers from the painting intensified, reverberating against the walls like the echo of a long-forgotten lament. For a moment, time seemed to still. The eyes in the portrait flickered, and the darkness on the canvas pulsated as though it were alive, responding to her every word. At the climax of the ritual, a gust of wind burst through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging everything into utter darkness. In that fleeting moment, Isabel felt a surge of warmth, as though a great burden had been lifted from her soul. When the light was restored, the painting remained. Yet something was different. The once impenetrable darkness that had crept over the canvas began to recede, the edges softening and revealing hints of the original colors, a beauty once concealed by sorrow. In the weeks that followed the ritual, the change in midnight reverie was palpable. The painting, though still mysterious and evocative, no longer deepened in darkness each day. Instead, it began a slow and steady process of returning to its original state, a state that was rich with subdued, yet luminous hues. The haunted eyes now carried a glimmer of hope, as if the spirit within had found a measure of redemption. Curators, visitors, and even the mansion's long-forgotten staff breathed a collective sigh of relief, sensing that the curse had at last been challenged. Yet even as the transformation took hold, Isabel knew that the journey had altered her irreparably. The painting had been both a mirror and a gateway, a reminder that beauty and despair were often inextricably intertwined. The ritual had not exorcised the dark emotions entirely, for they were a part of every human soul. Instead, it had tempered the malignant force that sought to overwhelm it. Isabel understood that the shadows remained an eternal counterpart to the light, each giving meaning to the other. As the months turned to years, midnight reverie became a focal point not only of the museum, but of the town's lore. Visitors traveled from far and wide to glimpse the transformation of the once cursed painting. Artists, writers, and philosophers debated the enigmatic interplay between darkness and light, and the story of Isabel's courageous quest became a beacon for all who had ever wrestled with despair. In quiet moments of reflection, Isabel would stand before the painting lost in thought. She recalled the nights of relentless gloom, the whispers that had almost driven her to despair, and the fraught ritual that had challenged the very essence of the supernatural. In those moments, the portrait spoke to her once more, not with a curse, but with a gentle reminder of the balance that existed in all things. The return of color to the canvas was not a denial of the darkness, but an acknowledgement of its presence and a celebration of the resilience of the human spirit. Isabel eventually penned her experiences in a detailed account that mingled personal memoir, scholarly analysis, and mystical revelation. The book, titled Brushstrokes of Midnight, The Journey from Darkness to Light, became a beloved work in both academic circles and among those intrigued by the paranormal. Its pages chronicled the haunting transformation of Midnight Reverie, offering insights into how art, memory, and emotion intertwine in ways that transcend the ordinary. The museum, once shrouded in mystery, became a sanctuary of contemplation. Visitors who stood before the painting often remarked on an inexplicable calm that settled over them, a silent promise that in every descent into darkness, there lay the potential for renewal. The legacy of the cursed painting thus evolved into a timeless parable that the journey through despair can, if met with courage and compassion, lead to an unexpected emergence of hope and beauty. Decades later, as the mansion's halls echoed with laughter and quiet conversations, Midnight Reverie hung in a place of honor. Though its history remained woven into its darkened fibers, the canvas was celebrated not as a relic of sorrow, but as a testament to the enduring power of change. In the soft glow of evening light, the painting's colors would shimmer with a subtle radiance, a living reminder that even the deepest darkness can be softened by the delicate brush of compassion and understanding. And so, the story of the painting that grew darker each day became a legend, a parable etched into the annals of art and life. It was a story about a cursed canvas and its eventual redemption, about the delicate balance of light and shadow, and most importantly, about the human heart's remarkable capacity to heal, transform, and ultimately, shine. In every corner of the mansion, and in the hearts of those who had witnessed its transformation, the tale of Midnight Reverie lived on. It served as an enduring symbol that beauty could emerge from despair, that the canvas of life, no matter how stained by sorrow, always held the promise of a new dawn.